Hi, welcome to the International Conference on Teaching and Learning. My name is Rolando B. Magat Jr., a graduating PhD in Mathematics education student at the Centro Escolar University, Manila City, Philippines. I'm also a full-time instructor at the Rizal Technological University, Mandaluyong City, Philippines. Today, I am glad to present to you my study entitled Gamified Mobile Courseware's Effect on Students' Cognitive and Non-Cognitive Abilities. My presentation is divided into 5 parts, namely the introduction, methodology, results, conclusions, and recommendations. So let's begin. One key factor to a successful teaching learning process is the teacher's ability to select, develop, and use instructional material to suit the learner's academic needs. And according to some studies, instructional materials used by teachers are essential because they can significantly increase students' achievement by supporting student learning. Instructional materials help in the learning process by allowing the students to explore the new knowledge autonomously. Thus, teachers must determine which learning experiences using these instructional materials effectively promote learning. In the meantime, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the lives of many people across the globe. And one sector that was dramatically affected by the said pandemic was the education sector. Almost all the usual activities that schools usually do were stopped because of the nationwide lockdown to minimize the virus's spread. And the normal face-to-face classroom setups that were customary to most schools were instantly shifted to virtual classrooms. And according to Education Week 2021, teachers need to adapt their usual teaching methods for classes that now occur online during these times of pandemic. In the Philippines, the Filipinos, known for being resilient, did not alter to continue their fight to battle ignorance amidst the challenges brought about by the pandemic, as the Education Secretary announced the beginning of classes for school year 2020 to 2021 on October 5, 2020 in all public schools nationwide. The Department of Education adopted flexible learning and used alternative modes of instruction such as modular instructions, television and radio-based instructions, and blended and online instructions to deliver the lessons to the learners. With the start of modern science and technology in the Philippines, through the K-12 curriculum, mathematics became one of the points of emphasis in the Philippine educational system, as Deb had mentioned. And because mathematics is learning by doing, the learners must be provided with enough learning activities to develop their skills even during these pandemic times. According to some studies conducted in the Philippines, the examples provided by the teacher and the self-learning modules or SLMs used for the flexible learning modality were not enough to enhance acquisition and development of mathematical concepts. In that regard, there should be instructional materials that should serve as supplementary materials to the alternative delivery mode of the DepEd. At present, the implementation of the statistics and probability course mathematics course in the senior high school curriculum has encountered challenges since its first peak. Ocampo and Ocampo 2018 discovered a lack of competent teachers who can teach the statistics and probability course. Reston and Lucias 2018 specified that 68% of their teacher respondents lack confidence in teaching statistics and probability. Also, Audines 2019 indicated that the teachers had challenges in the availability of instructional materials because the DepEd did not provide the textbooks in statistics and probability. The researcher also asserted that those textbooks available in the market claimed to be K-12 compliant were erroneous. And because of the ongoing nationwide lockdowns brought by the pandemic, and because the continuation of classes was pushed through, many challenges arose. Perlazo 2020 believed that there was a high possibility that students will not participate in a whole day of teaching, regardless of the instructional materials used because of the pandemic. While Ifran et al. 2020 asserted that using learning management systems during online classes has limitations, especially in writing mathematics symbols. Also, the UNICEF 2020 reported that children were bored and restless and missed interacting with their friends and spent a lot of time playing online games in the Philippines. While Gonzalez 2020 reported that DepEd has monitored 41 errors in the self-learning modules used by learners in the remote learning. And according to Jorge 2020, the most common technological interventions done in the Mindanao region during the quarantine period were ICT for ALS, FB Chat, Google Classroom, Aral Muna app, and DepEd Common. Since this pandemic has brought opportunities to mathematics teachers to change the way they teach the subject to the learners, the study was thus conceptualized. The study's purpose was to examine the effect of using gamified mobile courseware in statistics and probability to senior high school STEM and non-STEM students' cognitive and non-cognitive abilities as an instructional material in the flexible learning modality. Specifically, the study aimed to determine the effect of the gamified mobile courseware on the students' cognitive and non-cognitive abilities. For the cognitive abilities, we have conceptual knowledge and procedural knowledge. And for the non-cognitive abilities, the engagement in learning math, motivation, self-regulation, and self-efficacy in learning mathematics. And determine the students' perceptions on the use of gamified mobile courseware in learning mathematics through the focus group interview. Methodology. This study used the mixed method experimental intervention design by Creswell 2018. The quantitative data were from the students' pre- and post-tests, while the qualitative data was collected through the focus group interview after the post-test. The grade 11 students of the City of Mandaluyong Science High School in Mandaluyong City, Metro Manila, Philippines served as the study's population. A total of 126 students from the STEM and non-STEM groups volunteered in the study. Two sets of control and experimental groups were used, one set per STEM and non-STEM strand. a sample size of 104, to which 26 students per group were determined using an online statistical power and sample size determination calculator with 80% statistical power, 2.508 non-inferiority margin, and a 1.5% desired minimum detectable effect. And the simple random sampling technique was used in the selection of the respondents using a random number generator software. Students with term grades in general mathematics and present age served as basis for comparability. The Shapiro-Wilks W test was used to establish their normality, and the Bartlett's and Levin's test were used to establish the homogeneity of variance. Also, the independent t-test was used to establish the sample independence for their midterm grades and present age. And the instruments used include the cognitive abilities in mathematics test, which has 46 items with an item content validity index of 1.00 and a coefficient of 1.00 and an internal consistency coefficient of 0.88 using KR20. The non-cognitive abilities in mathematics questionnaire has 21 items with an item content validity index of 0.76, a coefficient of 0.69, and an internal consistency coefficient of 0.854. The research instruments were administered during asynchronous learning using Google Forms. The one-way MANOVA was used to compare the STEM and non-STEM students' cognitive and non-cognitive abilities. One-way ANCOVA was used if a significant difference was found in the students' cognitive and non-cognitive abilities. The semantic thematic analysis was used for the qualitative data, and the analysis both for quantitative and qualitative data was done using subscription version of SPSS and MaxQDA respectively. Results of the study show that the one-way MANOVA analysis indicates that there was no significant difference and the effect size was small among the STEM group's cognitive abilities, both for the conceptual and procedural knowledge after the experiment, although the experimental group 1 obtained higher mean scores in the conceptual and procedural knowledge domains than the control group 1. Also, the one-way MANOVA analysis asserts significant difference and the effect size was very large among the STEM group's cognitive abilities after the experiment. Specifically, no significant difference was found between the STEM group's conceptual knowledge, despite the fact that the experimental group obtained a higher mean score for the conceptual knowledge than the control group 2. But significant difference was found and the effect size was very large between the STEM group's procedural knowledge. The one-way ANCOVA analysis asserted significant effect and a very large effect size in the STEM group's procedural knowledge after controlling for the 4 covariates. Moreover, the one-way MANOVA analysis asserts that although the effect size was very large, there was no significant difference between the non-STEM group's non-cognitive abilities, specifically engagement, motivation, self-regulation, and self-efficacy in learning mathematics after the experiment, despite the fact that the non-cognitive abilities of the experimental group 1 were higher than the control group 1. To be more specific, a significant difference was found and the effect size was large between the non-STEM group's motivation level after the experiment. And the one-way ANCOVA analysis asserts significant effect and a large effect size between the non-STEM group's motivation level after controlling for the two covariates. The study also found out that the one-way MANOVA confirms a significant difference and a very large effect size in the non-cognitive abilities between the STEM group. In particular, the analysis of variance of the STEM group's self-efficacy was significant to the adjusted p-value, although the effect size was small. But the one-way ANCOVA asserted that there was no significant effect and the effect size was small between the STEM group's self-efficacy after controlling for the three covariates, despite the fact that the self-efficacy level of the control group 2 was higher than that of the experimental group 2. And the participants' feedback was categorized as content presentation, information, learning assessments, usability, functionality, aesthetics, engagement, and self-regulation. The major themes include cohesiveness of the learning contents, effective assessment approaches, user efficiency, mobile apps features, and fun learning experience. It is therefore concluded from the findings of the study that the use of gamified mobile courseware in statistics and probability did not significantly improve the non-STEM experimental group's cognitive abilities in terms of conceptual and procedural knowledge compared to the non-STEM control group who used the self-learning modules. On the other hand, it significantly improved the STEM experimental group's procedural knowledge compared to the STEM control group who used the self-learning modules. And the use of the gamified mobile courseware in statistics and probability significantly increased the motivation level of the non-STEM experimental groups. Also, it was concluded in the study that the significant difference between the STEM group's self-efficacy has occurred only by chance after the scores have been adjusted. And the use of the gamified mobile courseware in statistics and probability positively affected the students' procedural knowledge and motivation in learning mathematics, and it can be a useful instructional material in the flexible learning modality. The recommendations for this study include integration of gamified instructional materials may be used by the mathematics teachers in the flexible learning setup. Also, the Department of Education may provide incentives to teachers who will develop and construct gamified instructional materials for the use of all schools, both private and public, in every subject area, especially during the remote teaching and learning. And lastly, a study about the effects of gamification elements on students' conceptual and procedural knowledge in mathematics and engagement, motivation, self-regulation, and self-efficacy in learning mathematics may be explored by future researchers for future work. And that's all about my study. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless you.